China. India always wanted to have friendly relationship with China as both have borne that burnt of colonialism and it was evident in its recognition of communist China right from the beginning in 1950. Support of China in Korea War and support of China in UNSC seat. India also raised little objection over Chinese occupation over Tibet in 1950 and it even formally recognized it in 1954 as Panchashil Agreement was signed between the two and agreed on a mutual coexistence on the basis of it. India even held Chinese leadership in Bandung Conference in 1959. But in the same year, a big uprising happened in Tibet, and thousands of Tibetan refugees, along with the Dalai Lama, sought refuge in India, which was provided by India on humanitarian grounds on the condition that no political activity should be carried out from Indian soil. China, however, didn't take it so kindly, and soon after that, skirmishes took place on the India China border between soldiers of two sides, and China for the first time laid a firm claim on disputed area of Nefa and Ladakh. NEFA stands for Northeastern Frontier Agency. In October 1962, Chinese forces launched a massive attack on Nefa, today's Arunachal Pradesh, and soon occupied vast areas as Indian army showed little resistance. Indian PM Nehru sought western help, but China voluntarily retreated as unpredictably as it has launched a strike, leaving a bruised ego and a broken friendship. Non alignment and Panchashil got a body blow, and ironically, India was hit not by a capitalist imperial country but by a socialist friend. The US and the UK had responded positively, and they could not be brushed aside in post war scenario. Pakistan thought India was weakened and launched in 1965 war. Many analysts feel that Nehru failed to foresee the developments and instead of sorting out border disputes early on allowed the matters deteriorate and instead followed a forward policy which alarmed China and it had to launch attack in self-defense. Some others argue that India was still an underdeveloped country and could not have afforded too much military spending especially on Chinese border and have instead chosen to focus on industrialization and nation building. India also didn't want to have another insecure neighbor when one was already there in form of Pakistan. In aftermaths of refugee to the Dalai Lama, India had very little choice. Indian failure had not been because of native faith in Chinese friendship, not because of belief in utopian pacifism and Panchashir or under-equipped armed forces. In fact, military strength of Indian armed forces have been multiplied many times since 1947 when India defeated Pakistan. It was rather due to unexpected nature of the war. Approach of armed forces was not an integrated one as it was evident from little use of Indian air power in the war. Civilian military coordination was not good either. It was a failure of logistics, of intelligence, of nerve on the part of military commander who fled seeing onslaught of enemy. Others also argue that China for long wanted to make her presence felt on global scene, but was thwarted every time. Be it US recognition of Taiwan as real China, denying the UNSC seat, attempt to checkmate her in case of Korean War and Indochina conflict. Differences between Soviet and China over border issues. The Chinese were also upset that Afro-Asian countries were following Indian line in making friendship with both the US and the USSR, rather than Chinese way of distancing from both. These events made China frustrated and isolated and prompted China on path of aggressive assertion as manifested in 1962 war. Thus, Chinese were a result of Chinese own compulsion rather than aggressive posture of India or misjudgment of Nehru. In fact, Nehru was right in pursuing a policy of friendship as a developing country could hardly afford two hostile nations at its doorstep.